Here in Seoul.
Coming up on NEWSCENTER tonight. South Korea reviews plans to offer food aid to North Korea. U.S. President Trump, during his phone talk with President Moon, says he supports the plan.
Washington's point man on North Korea, Stephen Biegun, is in Seoul to discuss North Korea's latest military activity and ways to denuclearize the regime.
Amid sluggish growth and falling exports, the South Korean government unveils new measures focused on supporting small and mid-sized firms.
And traditional gifts of flowers and cakes on this Parents' Day seem to be less popular as parents prefer more practical gifts rather than symbolic ones. NEWSCENTER begins now.
Good evening to our viewers in Asia and hello to others watching from around the world. Welcome to Arirang NEWSCENTER, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Han Daeun.
And I'm Noah. Thank you, as always, for joining us this evening. South Korea says it plans to offer humanitarian food assistance to North Korea. So we'll begin reviewing the specifics of when and how, and we'll make an announcement once decisions are made.
Arirang's Unification Ministry correspondent Oh Jung-hee starts us off.
South Korea officially announced a plan Wednesday to provide food assistance to North Korea and said related procedures will begin soon.
We're the same people as the North Koreans, so we have humanitarian concerns about the grave food situation in the North recently announced by international organizations. South Korea will proceed with giving humanitarian food aid to the North through close coordination with the international community.
This comes after South Korean President Moon Jaein and U.S. President Donald Trump, in their phone call Tuesday night, agreed on the need to send the North food. The UN's food agencies had announced last week that more than 10 million people in the North, or about 40% of the population, are suffering from a food shortage, and that Pyongyang's crop production is at its lowest in 10 years. Seoul says it'll begin reviewing the specifics of how the assistance should be given.
Related organizations will first need to discuss the matters of when, how, and how much.
In 2017, South Korea had decided to offer the North humanitarian aid worth $8 million through UNICEF and the WFP. That assistance, which had to be given by 2018, was never sent, and the plan was scrapped. So things are now back to square one. Seoul has to determine once again on how much worth of aid it'll give the North. The Blue House says it's now starting to review things, and that includes whether South Korea will give the assistance directly to the North or through UN agencies. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Unification Minister Kim Hyun reaffirmed Seoul's commitment towards carrying out inter-Korean deals during his first visit to the Inter-Korean Liaison Office in Kaesong since taking office. Following the visit, Kim told reporters that he had briefly met with North Korean officials, to whom he asked to relay his greetings to his North Korean counterpart, Lee Sun-kwon, the chairman of North Korea's Committee for the Peaceful Reunification of the Fatherland.
We've also shared a strong will to implement the joint declarations signed by the two Koreas last year, as well as the need to normalize operations at the Joint Liaison Office.
The Joint Liaison Office was set up to bolster cross-border exchanges, but has been effectively idle amid a lack of progress in denuclearization talks between North Korea and the U.S. Washington's top North Korean negotiator, Stephen Biegun, is in Seoul to hold talks with South Korean officials. North Korea's latest military activity and fresh approach to the regime's final and fully verified denuclearization will likely top the agenda. Our Lee Ji-won at the Foreign Ministry for us.
Wrapping up his visit to Japan, U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Stephen Biegun arrived in South Korea Wednesday afternoon to discuss North Korea, including its firing last week of projectiles from its east coast. Seoul's foreign ministry says Biegun will be here until Saturday, meeting with his counterpart Lee Do-hoon, South Korea's Special Representative for Korean Peninsula Peace and Security Affairs. He's also expected to hold a meeting of the Seoul Washington Working Group on ways to resume dialogue between Pyongyang and Washington. Seoul's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Kim In-chul told reporters that the two sides will review the latest developments related to the North and ways to make progress on denuclearization and lasting peace on the peninsula. He also said they will discuss various other issues but did not specify. They'll likely work on coordinating a response to the North's projectile launches and managing the situation so talks do not fall apart. The issue of providing humanitarian aid to the North has also been brought up as a likely topic in the meeting, considering the North is experiencing its worst food crisis in a decade. Meanwhile, Biegun is expected to meet with other officials in charge of South Korea's diplomacy and security policies, including the newly appointed Unification Minister Kim Hyun-chul and Kim Hyun-jong, second deputy chief of the Blue House National Security Office. 이지원, Arirang News.
Turning to last night's phone call between the presidents of South Korea and the U.S., the two leaders discussed ways to keep Pyongyang from getting off track in denuclearization negotiations. They also talked about providing humanitarian aid to North Korea following the latest grim UN report on the regime's food shortages. Our presidential office correspondent Shin Se-min with more.
Speaking over the phone for the first time in nearly a month and in the wake of the North's recent projectile launches, Presidents Moon Jae-in and Donald Trump discussed ways to resume talks on scrapping North Korea's nuclear program while maintaining the current momentum for dialogue. South Korea's presidential spokesperson said in a statement that the leaders also talked about ways to prevent Pyongyang running off the tracks in regards to the denuclearization negotiations. Seoul's top office added the leaders agreed that their proper response following North Korea's unexpected projectile launch last weekend was extremely effective. In particular, President Moon said he appreciated Trump's tweet that came after the military activity, saying it played a crucial role in keeping North Korea and the denuclearization process moving in the right direction. President Trump tweeted that he believes North Korean leader Kim Jong-un realizes his country's great economic potential and that he will do nothing to interfere or end it. The White House said the two leaders discussed recent developments regarding North Korea and how to achieve the regime's final, fully verified denuclearization, though it did not provide additional information on the call. The leaders also talked about the recent UN report that depicted a grim image of North Korea and its food shortages. The Blue House spokesperson said President Trump assessed Seoul's provision of humanitarian food aid to North Korea as very timely and a positive step, adding that Trump said he supported the move. President Trump's stance is consistent from a month ago when he said he had no issue with such humanitarian support.
And I'm okay with that, to be honest. I think you have to be okay with that. And South Korea is doing certain things to help out with food and various other things for North Korea.
Both leaders also agreed to work toward having President Trump visit Seoul in the coming months, especially with the U.S. leader making two separate trips to Japan in May and June. And the expectation is that during their next encounter, the two leaders could perhaps shed some light on the details of how to quickly resume nuclear talks between Pyongyang and Washington. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Under the Moon Jae-in administration, we've seen major changes in inter-Korean relations. But now, at the administration's two-year mark, experts say there's yet more to do for the president to keep up the momentum. Our Park Hee-jun takes a look at President Moon's time in office so far and where things might be headed.
The Moon Jae-in government has opened a new chapter on the Korean Peninsula, but greater challenges still loom ahead for South Korea to remain a linchpin of the peace drive. That was the view shared by experts at a policy conference on Tuesday, aimed at assessing the administration's first 2 years in office and discussing where it should go from here. The government has made many concrete achievements, most notably easing military tension on the Korean Peninsula and laying the groundwork for inter-Korean railways. But progress in inter-Korean and North Korea-U.S. relations came to a pause since the Hanoi summit last month. Nevertheless, the government remains determined to cement the newly found peace on the Korean Peninsula.
Under close coordination with the U.S., Seoul plans to fully implement the inter-Korean agreements reached so far in order to advance relations and hold a fourth inter-Korean summit.
But achieving this vision requires close partnership with the relevant parties, something South Korea has not been doing well so far. Pointing to criticism that South Korea has been neglecting diplomacy with its four neighboring powers, the U.S., China, Japan, and Russia, experts emphasize that damaging relations with any of these countries must be prevented.
President Moon's new northern policy and new southern policy cannot replace South Korea's relations with the neighboring powers. The government must also work on resolving the most pressing issue of worsening Seoul-Tokyo relations.
Experts say that Seoul needs to find ways to smooth ties with Tokyo, especially through the upcoming G20 summit in Osaka next month. They also advised the Moon administration to establish a task force for a comprehensive analysis of the ongoing trade dispute between the U.S. and China, a key factor that affects North Korea's denuclearization. The best situation is for a deal on North Korea's denuclearization to be achieved within President Trump's term. But experts say that it's most likely that it will become a long-term goal, all the more reason for South Korea to maintain good relations with the relevant parties so that denuclearization talks can continue even after a change of administration. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Turning to some local politics now, and the ruling Democratic Party has elected three-term lawmaker Lee In-young as its new floor leader. In a runoff on Wednesday, he won 76 out of 125 votes. He is a former student activist who, in the campaign, promoted his aspirations for change and reform of his party. Here he is after winning today.
Through unity and integration, I will lead the party to victory in next year's general elections. I also face the difficult task of getting parliament running again. I will listen to every one of our fellow lawmakers to score a winning goal.
He will replace Hong Young-pyo and will take the helm for the next year. He'll be tasked first and foremost with mending ties with the main opposition Liberty Korea Party, ties that soured after key bills were fast-tracked last week. Normalising Parliament will be a must to deal with a stack of pending bills related to economic revitalisation as well as the government's extra budget proposal. He will also have to work with the party's chair to coordinate strategies to steer the party to victory in the 2020 general elections, as well as to back up the Moon Jae-in administration's policy goals. South Korea's exports have been falling on year for 5 consecutive months now, and to stem the bleeding, the government has announced new measures to support small and mid-sized firms selling their products online. Kori Ater explains.
To revitalize South Korea's flagging exports, many analysts have pointed to the importance of supporting small and mid-sized firms because they generally lack networking opportunities and resources compared to larger ones. And to help these smaller firms, economic-related ministries unveiled new measures on Wednesday to support SMEs in their e-commerce activities, such as selling their products on global platforms. The government aims to foster 15,000 online export firms by 2022. These refer to companies that originally depended on domestic demand but are eligible for government support in their e-commerce exports. The Ministry of SMEs said it will achieve this goal through 2 main methods. First, because small businesses export a relatively small quantity of goods, the government will provide financial support in terms of storing the export items. This will save the firms' distribution costs and enhance their price competitiveness in the online market. Second, the government will collaborate with global platforms and provide lessons on how companies can actually upload or sell their products. The ministry has allocated around $36 million this year to support online export activities. Other than e-commerce, ways to foster unicorn firms were announced as well. A unicorn firm refers to a privately held startup that's valued at over $1 billion. Because the ministry believes startups can become unicorn firms by expanding internationally, the government will work with related organizations so they can provide overseas networking opportunities. The ministry also aims to help startups expand abroad by providing communal workspaces in India and the U.S. later this year to help firms adjust to the new environment. Last but not least, the government will increase the number of cultural activities related to Hallyu, or the Korean wave, so small firms can more easily enter emerging markets. Kori Ater, Arirang News.
New numbers out from the Bank of Korea on the country's balance of payments in March and the first quarter of this year. The preliminary figures show the goods account still with a surplus, but down sharply. Our Kim Hae-sung tells us why.
South Korea's current account surplus for the first quarter of 2019 slumped to a low not seen in roughly 7 years. The Bank of Korea says the current account surplus recorded $11.25 billion, the smallest figure since the second quarter of 2012, mainly due to slowing global trade and sluggish chip exports. Both exports and imports dipped by around 8% on year in the first quarter. The goods export surplus fell near $3 billion on year, narrowing to $19.6 billion in the first quarter, a 5-year low. This came as chip exports that account for a fifth of the country's total exports at around 8% of GDP plunged more than 20%. Petrochemical goods exports also declined 5%. By region, exports to the U.S. increased, but shipments to China, Japan, the EU, and the Middle East all fell in the first quarter. The services account deficit, however, narrowed by $1.7 billion to $7.7 billion thanks to more Chinese and Japanese tourists traveling to Korea. In the month of March, the current account surplus recorded $4.8 billion, remaining in the black for the 83rd consecutive month. But still, both exports and imports fell more than 9% on year. On top of sluggish exports, the Bank of Korea said corporate dividends for foreign shareholders, which are mainly paid out in April, will likely result in an even smaller current account surplus or possibly even a deficit for April. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
South Korea's exports to China last year increased by more than those to any other country, by a whopping 14% on year to nearly $162 billion. Statistics Korea attributed the jump to an improvement of ties with China after the THAAD missile defense dispute in 2017, which prompted retaliation from Beijing. China's demand for memory chips and petrochemical goods grew sharply last year. Korea's overall exports in 2018 came to more than $602 billion, with Southeast Asia being the #1 export destination at 28% of the total, followed by China at 27%. China's top trade negotiator is headed to Washington for 2 days, starting on Thursday, to try to continue their trade negotiations despite President Trump's latest threat to slap new tariffs on Chinese goods. Our Cha Sang-mi has more.
The atmosphere surrounding the trade talks has changed dramatically in the space of a week. Now a Chinese delegation led by Vice Premier Liu He, one of the country's top economic policymakers, is heading to Washington for another round of negotiations. China's Commerce Ministry says the talks will be held on Thursday and Friday. The trip comes in the wake of President Trump's announcement last weekend that from this Friday he will raise tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese products to 25% from the previous 10%. Caught off guard, reports say the Chinese delegation were initially uncertain whether Liu should even go to Washington. However, U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin has said that if the Chinese side brings a new proposal with them, the U.S. delegation will review it and pass it to President Trump. The plan for now, though, according to U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer, is still to hike the tariffs at 12:01 a.m. Friday, Washington time. An analyst says this round of talks will be crucial, but it won't, on its own, end the trade war or even ease tensions, since the negotiations are not merely about economics.
The Trump administration is using the trade war in various ways. He takes out the U.S. China trade card when his position in domestic politics is in limbo, and in international politics when there is a North Korea issue.
Chun Yong-chan says Trump has used this strategy before to pressure Beijing to open its markets to foreign investment or to stop currency manipulation. Meanwhile, concerns that the trade conflict will continue sent Korean stocks down Wednesday. Investors were also rattled by North Korea's firing of projectiles into the East Sea last weekend. The benchmark Kospi closed sharply lower, down 0.41% to close at 21.68. The tech-heavy Kosdaq slid more than 1% to 745. Global stock market have also plunged since Trump's tweet, with the S&P 500 falling Tuesday by more than 1.65%. Cha Sang-mi, Arirang News.
In other news, 2 Russian aircraft entered South Korea's air defense identification zone without prior notice last Friday, prompting South Korea's Air Force to dispatch F-15K fighter jets in response. A military source said today that 2 Russian anti-submarine Tu-142 planes entered the KADIZ near the southern coast of Jeju Island 4 times for a total of 1 hour and 39 minutes. No countermeasures were taken after the Russian pilots defined their purpose of flight in response to the Air Force's warning messages. Although no further details have been revealed, observers say it is presumed the 2 aircraft were part of a 6-day Sino-Russian naval drill held near China's port city of Qingdao leading up to May 4th. Today, May 8th, is Parents' Day in Korea. Traditionally, children would give their parents carnations as a token of respect and gratitude, but it seems that gesture is less popular now than it used to be. What more parents want now is something a bit more practical. Oh Soo-young reports.
It seems flowers and cake no longer cut it as go-to gifts for Parents' Day. According to various media platforms, flowers and cake were rated as generic and unpractical by most parents, who also said they would rather not receive smartphones or any other smart gadgets. Unlike Western culture, which celebrates Mother's and Father's Day separately, Korea has observed a special day for all parents since 1973. It's a day for hyodo, which means treating your parents with respect and devotion. This is an age-old societal principle based on the country's family-centered Confucianism culture. Carnations were the traditional present for Parents' Day, but in recent years there's been a growing preference for practical options rather than symbolic ones. The most popular Parents' Day gifts on Naver include massage chairs, smaller massage devices, as well as health supplements and beauty products. Cash, of course, also remains a popular option. One interesting gift this year is going on a blind date.
As more and more young people are staying single and foregoing marriage these days, it seems some of them are offering to go on blind dates to make their parents happy. That's a new gift option we've seen this year.
Regardless of what's inside the wrapping paper, it's clear that a gift still has to come from the heart. A heartfelt letter or a phone call were high up on the wish list. Quality time together, such as dining out or watching a movie, is also becoming more popular. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
More foreigners visited South Korea for shopping and food last year than in the previous year. And they stayed in the country for longer periods than before. Our Choi Si-young has the latest trend on the nation's tourism sector.
According to the latest data released by the Culture Ministry and Korea Tourism Organization, around 15 million tourists visited South Korea last year. A 15% jump from a year earlier when China put a travel ban on group tours to South Korea with a THAAD anti-missile shield spec. And the tourists stayed in South Korea longer than the previous year too, staying for an average of 7.2 days. Out of 16,000 visitors surveyed at international airports by the ministry, around 92.5% said they came for shopping, while 71.3% said they came to taste the local food. The most visited place was Seoul, followed by Gyeonggi-do Province, Pusan, Gangwon-do Province, and Jeju-do Island. Gangwon-do Province saw a bump in visitors due to the Pyeongchang 2018 Winter Olympics. The survey also said most of the tourists got travel information from their friends or colleagues. Once they arrive in Korea, most of them search for information on their smartphone. But the survey also showed visitors most needed information on travel distances and transportation details, followed by information on local restaurants. The data indicates more foreign guests visit places other than the capital Seoul and that they stay longer to shop and taste local food. The government said it will address the inconveniences mentioned by the foreign visitors. Choi Si-young, Arirang News.
South Korean pitcher Hyun Jin earned another shout-out in LA Dodgers' 9-0 victory over the Atlanta Braves at Dodger Stadium on Tuesday evening local time. Ryu bagged his 4th win of the season after limiting the Braves' offense to just 4 hits while striking out 6 batters and walking none. This was Ryu's first complete game shout-out in almost 6 years and only his 2nd of his major league career. Ryu now has 4 wins and a loss for the Dodgers this season. He's set to take the mound against the Washington Nationals next Monday morning, Seoul time. South Korea's largest annual market for broadcasting content kicked off in Pusan on Wednesday. At the 13th edition of the Pusan Contents Market, over 1,100 companies from 50 countries will showcase content ranging from dramas and films to documentaries and animations. A wide range of seminars, forums, and one-on-one consulting will take place during the 4-day run. Arirang TV has also invited 16 broadcasters from 6 ASEAN countries to a seminar it'll host at the market to share its knowledge on content creation in the Korean market. Visitors can check out the market until the 11th of May at the Pusan Exhibition and Convention Center.
A record number of new companies opened in Korea in the first quarter amid steady growth in the service sector. According to the SMEs Ministry, just under 27,000 new firms were established, an on-year rise of nearly 1%. Wholesale and retail businesses took up most of the newly founded companies, followed by manufacturing firms. So-called family-friendly companies in South Korea are outperforming other firms when it comes to employment, sales and profits. The government defines such companies as those that work to prevent sexual harassment and guarantee a 40-hour work week and maternity leave. Market Tracker CEO Score studied 500 companies, of which 148 were family-friendly. At the family-friendly ones, employee numbers last year were up 7.5% compared to just 4% at the others. Family-friendly firms also outperformed when it came to sales and profits, which rose by almost 13% and 31%, respectively. If you hear loud and sudden noises from the sky this week, don't be alarmed. The Korean Air Force's aerobatics display team, the Black Eagles, is preparing for some air shows to celebrate the Space Challenge 2019 this weekend, an event held for aspiring children in the field of aerospace. Depending on the weather, the main show is scheduled for Saturday over the western port city of Incheon, as well as Gyeonggi-do province. Another show is planned for Sunday over Seoul and Seongnam. K-pop academies are opening at Korean cultural centers in 25 countries, and one of them already opened on Tuesday in Russia. For about 8 months, they will offer courses to foreigners on how to sing and dance K-pop style. There'll be 80 instructors, including those from South Korean entertainment companies such as JYP. That has been your 3-minute news flash. It is that time now to take a look at some of the digital media content available on Arirang's social media platforms.
And today we have another episode of Kori Ater with one YouTuber sharing with us how she learned the Korean language.
안녕하세요 여러분, 엠소입니다. Hi everyone, it is your friendly neighborhood Korean language enthusiast, Margarita. Hi! I could literally take a screenshot. How good is your makeup girl? 약점들은, 약점 means it was just perfect. It was back in 2014. I was very into K-pop, and I decided to do something crazy. I recorded a cover of a very popular song at the time, which was Taeyang's Eyes, Nose, Lips. I even submitted that cover video to a Taeyang's Eyes, Nose, Lips cover contest. I won that contest. So I started receiving a lot of messages from real Korean people who were writing to me in Korean. So I did not understand what they were saying at all. Most of them were saying that I am in reality a Korean person who has lived abroad, also done plastic surgery to look foreign. What? if I sound like a native speaker without knowing the language, how am I going to sound if I start learning Korean? That was the day I decided to start learning Korean. Never actually taken any classes, courses, read textbooks. I've never even lived in Korea. So if I haven't done any of those, how have I been studying Korean? First, my phone's interface is all in Korean. Setting my phone's language to Korean really helped me learn the everyday, useful, pragmatic words in Korean. Personally, I'm also a very visual learner. So what I do is I stick out the life out of my entire apartment. As embarrassing as it is, I even read out K-drama scripts to myself in front of a camera to make sure that my pronunciation is correct. I practice some speaking. Well, this might be an international conflict. It really works. I don't think I've ever had a favorite Korean word that I would use all the time, but any Korean word that ends with gi for some reason gives me so much joy. Words like 보내기, or 공부하기, or 행복하기. Any verb that I can add a gi to make it a noun, I will do so. I will find excuses to do so. I don't know, I'm just special like that. With that said, I want to know what your guys' favorite Korean words are. Let me know in the comments, like this video, subscribe, bye, annyeong!
The weather was warm and bright today, like your bright pink dress, Michelle, today.
Yes, and it was also quite windy, so taking a little bit off the heat. For the latest weather forecast, let's turn to our very pink Michelle Park at the Weather Centre. Michelle.
Hi guys, now the weather has been very dry for several days now. Now east of Gangwon province will see strong winds of 20 meters per second until tomorrow, so please take care. And Thursday will be somewhat cloudy across the whole country, as will the surrounding countries. But still make sure to apply sunblock to protect yourself from the strong UV rays. The morning in Seoul will be cool, kicking off to 11 degrees Celsius, while the southern areas will start off warmer at 15 and 14 degrees respectively for Pusan and Jeju. Now the east coast, where the hot and dry winds are blowing, will see higher readings, while Seoul will reach up to 23 degrees. The weather will be clear this weekend with no rain, and on Sundays, Seoul will get a taste of the early summer readings. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That will do it for this edition of Arirang News. Thank you, as always, for watching.
Stay tuned to Arirang for more analysis on current issues on News in Depth coming up next.